right. Hi there. I'm Akash, and you're watching an episode of This is Recruiting. It's the webinar where you get to learn from the world's top recruiters. And the best part is that a lot of the questions asked on this webinar, on this show, come from our community of recruiters. Now, I've got two special people here with us today. First up is Sachin Gupta, the CEO of Hackerearth. Sachin, can you please tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sorry, I was on mute. I think that's going to be the phrase for 2020. Sorry, I was on mute. So yeah, absolutely love doing this series. So great to be here. A quick introduction about me. Hi everyone. I'm Sachin, your host for today's webinar, and I'm the founder and CEO at Hackerearth. Amongst various things that I do in my role, the one that I enjoy most is talking to leaders like Kim, who we have on the webinar today, and discussing how the recruitment landscape is evolving and what we can do to make technical hiring in particular, but hiring in general, easier and more efficient for both employers as well as for job seekers. So look forward to an exciting discussion today.
Awesome. So let me talk about who Sachin will be interviewing today. Well, today with us is superstar recruiter Kimberly Haught. Now, she's the Global Talent Acquisition Manager at CSG, and there are three really special things about Kimberly. The first is that she does something really special at work. She's responsible for leading and inspiring a global team of recruiters to hire amazing talent for CSG. Second, her blog, Better Call Kim, is where she helps job seekers understand the finer details of the interview process and how they can make a lasting impression and land their next big opportunity. The third reason, which is one of the most special things about Kim, is that her specialty is marketing-led recruiting and personal branding for recruiters. So those are three awesome things about Kimberly. And Kimberly, welcome to the show. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much for having me today.
Awesome. Great. Right. So before we move ahead, I want to talk about two quick things over here. The first being that this episode of This is Recruiting is recorded, which means that you'll be getting a recorded version of this in a couple of days in your email. So if you miss something, don't worry about it. We'll shoot it over to you. The second thing is that we're using the GoToWebinar tool. As you can see over here, there's a nice little panel in the bottom right that lets you ask questions. So you can go ahead and do that, and we'll be happy to answer all your questions. Before we move ahead, I want to take a quick moment and sort of introduce you guys to Hackerearth, right? So at Hackerearth, we realize that technical recruiting is very, very hard. We realize that a position takes a long time to close. We realize that many hours go into screening candidates every year from a recruitment team. We also realize that both our technical recruiters and hiring managers spend a lot of time across multiple rounds to screen a candidate. And we realize that in the end, all this adds up to a very, very scary cost for the average hire. So we did a deep dive into the whole hiring process, and we realized that there are two big bottlenecks. There is screening and then there's interviewing. And we decided that we'd come up with three important offerings to help recruiters solve for this. The first one is our wonderful developer assessment platform. Now, what's cool about this platform is that you can just go ahead and upload a job description into it for any role that you're hiring for. And our platform goes ahead and builds a nice assessment for it based on the role, the experience you're looking for, the kinds of skills and coding languages you're looking for. And in a couple of minutes, you've got a really beautiful assessment that's ready. Can you make changes to it? Yes. Can you go ahead and add new questions to it? Absolutely. You can send this test over to a couple of developers, a few hundred, a few thousand developers, have them take that test for a few hours, and in a few hours, you suddenly know which one of those developers has a really, really great amount of technical skill. You can see past their resumes. What used to take you a couple of weeks now takes just a few hours. The second offering that we've got for recruiters and hiring managers everywhere is Face Code. Now, what do you do when you go ahead and find these 4 or 5 really different developers who you really want to talk to? You go ahead and have a Zoom call with them. Well, we've built an interviewing tool that is perfect for pair programming and for doing these technical interviews. So Face Code not only has video chat, it also has this beautiful really nice looking integrated developer environment, which lets the candidate feel really comfortable. You can organize a really nice pair programming session. You can offer feedback live in the session. And what's beautiful about it is that there are recordings and transcriptions of the entire session on the platform. So when you have a couple of interviews that you've done, you can go back, review them, review the performance of the candidate, and see which ones actually, performed really well. You can make a really well-informed, well-thought-out choice. And the final offering that we've got is our virtual hackathons. Now, these hackathons are really cool because we've done over 1,500 of them, and we do it in two ways. One, we give you the software and you can go ahead and organize your own hackathon, or B, we do hackathon as a managed service. Now, what's cool about this is you can basically tap into our massive community of over 5 million developers. You can choose to target a certain class of developers, and the results are great. Many companies have used our hackathons to find their next big idea, to find the next big piece of technology. Many companies have used it to find great talent. And a lot of companies today are using it to engage their internal talent and have a great L&D session for them. So these are our three offerings that we've got for you guys at Hackerearth. Thank you for hearing about that. Now we're going to go ahead and jump into what you came here for, which is the webinar session. Sachin, please go ahead and take the stage.
Thanks a lot for that introduction, Akash, and excited to kick this off. So, Kim, the topic that we are talking about today is how the recruiting function has evolved from being a sales role to a marketing role, and this is something that I'm particularly quite excited about. So, let's start with that. As our first question for the day. What do you think has been this evolution, and could you talk a little bit about how that evolution has taken place over the years?
Yeah, no, absolutely. When I was first approached with this topic, I first thought back to when I started in recruiting, and I was trained that it was a numbers game. So I was cold calling all day long, running through the same databases over and over and over again, just trying to get a bite of anyone to talk to me. This old approach did get results at times. You were able to sometimes find candidates, but the effort that you put in and the constant not focused messaging that was going out to candidates really wasn't for me, that type of approach. And it really didn't focus on candidate experience. You filled your job, move on to the next. I'm not a fan of the term talent war, but the fierce competition that came between companies to attract and retain top talent, I think, is what really shifted recruiting to more of a marketing approach. Now it's focused on candidate experience and ultimately the employee experience and investment that comes out of that. So we have less of a reactionary approach to recruitment. Yes, there is still, the cold outreach to candidates, but the marketing approach allows for more meaningful discussions with folks. I'm a big advocate for recruiters turning into talent magnets, and it's all done through proper marketing and campaigns that reach and promote your network to respond. There always will be an overlap between sales and marketing, and honestly, recruiters will still need to be sales minded to a degree, but I really think how people are approaching a sale, whether you're in recruiting or true sales role, is changing overall, and using the right marketing strategies is what will help a recruiter stand apart.
Right. And I completely agree with you when you said that any function will always have sales and marketing, and recruiters would continue to do a little bit of sales as well. But I think the point that you're trying to refer to is the sales aspect of it should just be about the closing, right? The formalities and the operation processes. It should not be about having to spend hours and hours to convince a candidate. So correct me if I'm wrong, but what I understand is by a marketing-led approach, you mean when the candidate actually wants to be interviewed, they are more or less sold on the job, the opportunity, a lot of other things, and then it's just about going through the process of actually closing that candidate to a prospective to an employee. Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely. I think back, like I said, when I first started recruiting, it was more about just, you had a job to fill. You had to fill it. No matter what it took, you got that job filled. Now it's more relationship driven. It's more, it's more interaction with the candidates and how you can start closing them from the beginning, offering them information about the company, offering them information that's going to make them feel comfortable with the entire process, things that I think maybe recruiters didn't have time to do or weren't focused on before because they were smiling and dialing all day long.
So picking on that and kind of unpacking that a little bit more, could you further talk a little bit about what are some of the key differences that one would see in a sales first approach versus a marketing first approach to recruitment?
Yeah, absolutely. So back to, my early recruitment days and hitting the phones day in and day out, we actually had, metrics to make X amount of calls a day. And it was a big focus on the numbers game. And like I said, to be honest, that wasn't for me. I've always been a people person. And one of my life goals is always to help people. And, this approach really didn't jive with my values. So this forced me down a path to find more of a consultative recruitment approach, focused on the human element and what I felt was missing at the time. So, sharing those values and holding integrity in the recruitment process are ultimately what guided me to my company and to start my blog. Too many recruiters were taking the wrong approach to candidates and burning reputations and giving our profession a bad name. People would hear recruiter and just think we were a roadblock to getting them, to them getting a job, or, we're going to spam them all day long with messages and calls. And, the old approach to this, regardless if it's recruiting or sales in general or not, is evolving to be more relationship focused. We now have access to CRMs and other platforms and technology that allow us to be more agile in our approach and connect with people in different ways, rather than just pulling a phone number out and trying to give them a call, whether they're interested or not knowing what skills they have in general. Like I said, there always will be an overlap between these two strategies, but I think the marketing approach is more robust. So we aren't just cold calling. We're really striving to understand our audience. We're showcasing our company values and integrity and communicating that employer value proposition to a global community. Top talent will always be in demand and they will always have a choice. So how do you communicate with them? Are you going to blast them with similar messages over and over and over again, hoping that they respond? Or are you going to try to reach out with a more targeted message after they already have maybe learned a little bit more about your company through different content that's out there or whatever it may be? One of those is obviously going to get a better response rate. And, when it comes to these differences, my biggest piece of advice is to hold integrity in that process. Candidates are going to have access to Glassdoor and other reviews and things online. And if your campaigns are not honest, it's going to burn your reputation quickly. It's all about, doing the right thing.
Yeah. So it's also not just about closing that particular opportunity, right? Like the candidate is today engaging with you in a much longer life cycle, not just in your current organization, but as a recruiter, you carry a brand for yourself, and you do that wonderfully across all your social media channels. So I think people should also be cognizant of the fact that they might end up working with the same set of candidates in some other organization, and that's something that they should keep into consideration while they're messaging and while they're reaching out.
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing that I always focus on is just being true to myself, being true to my values, and holding honesty in what I do, because then it's easily consistent, because you're not trying to be something you're not. So
yeah, just speak the truth so that you don't have to remember what you said the last time.
Exactly.
So you mentioned that early in your career you actually started with that cold calling kind of approach, which didn't fit well with you. Now, and I believe at CHT today, you lead the charter for a recruitment-led marketing. And fortunately, you're also in a position to influence this because it's a strategic direction, right? So this is not something that an individual recruiter would do just on their own time. Yes, they could do it for their own set of roles, but ideally for maximum impact, you would like this to be across organization, right? How did you kind of battle with this change? Maybe not at your current org, but in the past, when people are still used to doing things the old way. So did you face resistance? And would love to understand any anecdotal stories on how you kind of wagered through that.
Yeah, I mean, you're always going to find people that are resistant to change, but the only way that you can innovate is through change. And so that's something that even with my team and others that have reached out to me on LinkedIn and recruiters, and like, how did you build your brand and how did you do this? And you have to start somewhere. You're gonna have wins, you're gonna have failures. You learn from the failures and move on. And it's just helping to show people that change can be good. Change is what helps us grow, and change is what helps us innovate. And so when it comes to recruiting, I mean, I've been in the past, like I said, with organizations that were focused on that cold calling. And to be honest, I'm not sure anyone really enjoyed that approach. But where do we take things next? And I think to really combat that, it's being able to offer solutions, whether they're right or end up not being the right solution, I guess, or end up being right or wrong, I guess is what I'm trying to say, and being able to learn from them. It's just, it's influencing people and getting people comfortable with that change.
Got it. Got it. That makes sense. And then could you talk a little bit about some of the key marketing strategies that have worked for you? Of course, I don't want you to give out any secret sauce that you don't want to, but things that, as practices or strategies that have worked well for you that the audience can benefit from.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so obviously my personal story of branding and then helping to evolve the employer brand with my organization is by far the best strategy out there. Like I said, I'm a huge advocate for recruiters turning into talent magnets. And how do you do that? It's not messaging thousands of people online like, come see my job. It's showcasing the values of your company, showcasing who you are, offering people some sort of meaningful content that's going to offer value to them is ultimately the best strategy. It's also finding where those people are that you want to connect with. So if you have if you have issues finding maybe a certain technical skill set, how do you reach those people? What do you do? Are people that have this technical skill set, are you more likely to find them on LinkedIn? Are you more likely to find them through an employee referral program, or perhaps GitHub or Stack, whatever it may be? Where do you connect with those people? And so being able to build campaigns that are not only focused on interests that certain people may have, but also advertising it or getting that word out of where you may find them. And so it's all about balancing the messaging that you're put out there, where you're putting that messaging out there, and just being consistent and showcasing your corporate values. But my biggest story has been, helping job seekers. My branding has now evolved to helping recruiters to evolve and to be able to build a strong network and connect with so many people, and not just relying on those old recruiting sales strategies. So there's so many different I guess strategies out there, but trying one and seeing what works for you is really most important, just to get started.
Got it. As you said, the first step, is the key. Once you get started, obviously, you will find other ways by which you can continue doing it. So one of the things that I wanted to kind of talk about is you spoke about kind of taking the corporate brand out there, echoing the values that you have as an organization. And I believe, young talent today does care about that. They want to know what are the values that the company has and how true you are to that value. Now, there are two ways of kind of advocating this or taking it out there. One is as a corporate itself, right, which kind of falls into the corporate marketing function. And then the other thing is you're doing as a recruiter, where if you look at it, that's not necessarily your job description. But if you want to go the marketing way, you would do it. So how do you kind of balance that out? Is there like a collaboration that you have with the corporate marketing team? Is there kind of a guidance that you give to your own recruiters as to how they could, carry this brand while still make sure you're not saying something that you shouldn't, right? So there's also this element of talking about the right thing from a corporate perspective. So how have you balanced that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so it's making sure that your goals are aligned, between the corporate marketing and strategy and whatever talent acquisition, recruitment, marketing strategies that you have. Obviously every company is going to have unique requirements and what type of messaging they put out there, but having consistent goals is first and foremost important. And think about when you're interviewing for a job too. I mean, that's something that you should be asking during an interview process. Your values and what you honor and respect in your own life is aligned with your company. And so that is something that'll make that job a lot easier. Making sure your corporate marketing strategy and your recruitment marketing strategies are aligned is what messaging that you are putting out there in terms of your corporate values and the environment that your organization has. Is that what it actually is like? Are people going to come in and say, yep, 100%, that's exactly what I was expecting when I walked into CSG? Or are they going to walk in and see something completely different? Obviously, the latter is going to end up falling to the wayside. And so making sure that alignment is first and foremost there. We have a lot of discussions on, what content can we put out there on different channels that can showcase, different opportunities we have or our environments. One of the things that one of our talent strategists on our marketing team came up with was Talent Tip Tuesdays, which was really cool. And it kind of spun off of some of the things that I like to do and put out in the community is tips to help job seekers during an interview process. So we made that a little bit more streamlined in terms of the questions and things that we get in, not only about our company's process, but processes in general. And, how can we put out video content and different meaningful messages out there to help the greater community, whether they're interviewing with CSG or not. And so this was shared across all of our corporate channels. And so it sometimes takes, discussions and alignment, because corporate marketing is going to be focused more on how can they drive business. Right. What wins has the company had in terms of products and solutions, but the people are ultimately what make up a company. And so there's no excuse for not finding an alignment and balance between corporate and recruitment marketing strategies.
Got it. So this next one is, kind of build up to that, and I think more relevant for leaders out there as they're thinking about, probably putting in this change. So you touched upon a few things like, video content, tips and suggestions that you would put out for your audience. So that's a lot of content and creativity. Now, like I said, it could be daunting for someone who's new to this, right? Who's not done this in the past. So do you feel that, one can still execute a good strategy by a very tight collaboration with the corporate marketing team? Or would you even go to the extent of saying, hey, why don't you hire a person with a marketing frame of mind, bent of mind in your team, in the recruitment team, and let them kind of set the tone and drive all these activities? Have you looked at that model of having someone from a marketing background in talent acquisition?
We do. So it technically sits kind of as that bridge between both sides of the communications, the recruitment marketing, the corporate marketing aspect. So we do have someone that helps us manage that. A lot of it comes from the data and the analytics that go along with that. I'm not a marketing specialist to know, well, what's the best inbound strategy for this, and what type of results. I know what results we want to get, and I am able to bring thoughtful ideas to the table, but I'm not that marketing guru. So we do have someone on our team that does manage that, and it's been incredibly helpful in not only building our case that recruitment marketing is an extreme need, because people are always going to be needed within our organization. And so, yeah, that model has worked out well for us, because it's allowing someone with that marketing and strategic expertise to come in and help guide us, as we know the challenges that recruiters face, we know the goals that we have, and how can we align to really build robust strategies that are going to get us the results we need, especially as a growing organization.
Got it. I think so. That's a very key point that you just highlighted, that you do have someone who kind of bridges the gap, and that makes things easier, I think, on both fronts. So changing tracks a little bit, moving from strategic discussion to something more, I would say, tactical, in the sense, when you start thinking about recruitment marketing, right? One immediate question pops up in your mind, then how do you manage pipeline? Because you can't really, you could kind of control inbound. Like if you amp up your marketing, you'll see more inbound, and you could slow it down, but you truly cannot control it, right? Like if you build a great brand, you'll continue to receive applicants, and it may happen that you don't have a role open at that point in time, or you might see a surge in a certain position, and then your current inbound channels may not be able to meet that. So how do you balance out marketing strategies with pipelining?
Yeah, absolutely. So at CSG, we do use Phenom People and their CRM to manage both active and passive pipelines of candidates, which is really helpful in getting candidates engaged, being able to build out email and different marketing campaigns to help them learn more about CSG and to be in touch with opportunities as they come available. Recruiting in the, I think back to my past positions, and when I first started recruiting, you didn't know that you had to actively target a specific skill set or to find a specific person until that request hit your desk. There was no leadway to get there. And so one of the big strategies that we have is being able to work closely with leadership to understand what future hiring trends are going to be and find ways to connect with those who may be a good fit for future opportunities. It's building that talent community, that network around us. And so we obviously can focus, predicting the future, as we all know, is nearly impossible. But if we can at least guide our content and our campaigns in certain areas, maybe it's, we're going to be hiring tech talent in X location, and we need to be, focusing on building campaigns that are going to be attractive to talent in those regions. It's really just kind of building that community to the best, to predict future needs to the best of our ability. Having a CRM where we can keep in contact with people, we can track, and then, just kind of building our brand around that, it has been most successful for us. It's really all about, proactive recruitment as much as possible. And I think one thing that is changing with the landscape is that talent acquisition is now having a place at the table to discuss what those future business needs look like. If you have a leader coming to you saying that we need to hire, web developers in this location, well, what's the market like in that location? If we have the ability to hire in an alternative location where, maybe we don't have as much competition on talent, or we have the ability to partner with a specific, college or university in that region that can help us find talent in a new way and grow talent. And so I think that's something that's really changed, and something that's really exciting about talent acquisition, is that we can really drive and be those talent experts for the leaders within the organization, rather than just sitting back and reacting and, okay, I'll build a pipeline today, just tell me what you need type approach.
So I think that's a very, very relevant point. Traditionally, recruiting as a function has been looked at almost like a delivery function. You come up, you give this requirement, and all the requirements, at least I don't know what it is today, but used to be like as of yesterday, right? We need to hire 100 people as of yesterday. And of course, that doesn't scale. You may be able to do it in one or two extreme conditions when business demands it, but that cannot be the go-to strategy every time. And you're saying that making sure that you have an equal seat on the table and having these conversations ahead of time, planning for it, making it more strategic, will actually help you manage that pipeline with an inbound recruitment marketing driven strategy. Is that correct? Absolutely. That's exactly on point. Yeah. And how do you, then what if, might be a tricky question, but let's say a leader comes in and, you consistently see they're not planning ahead. Have you been in situations where you had to push back, and how have you, if yes, then how have you handled those conditions, those situations?
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously, you're going to have people that just are naturally more reactive to changes that are going on in the business. And so I think one of the important things for recruiters to do is to understand what is going on, not only within their organization, but also the industry and the trends as well. It not only helps you maybe guide some discussions on the talent that they're looking for, assessing what they actually need. How many times as recruiters have we talked to a hiring manager and we have a job description that they sent in front of us? We talk to them about what they need, and it's two completely separate things. And I think that's where recruiters need to know the industry, know what's going on, know the job markets, to be able to thoughtfully push back and help them understand what they need. That's that's our job. I mean, that's what we do, within a people organization to help leaders understand what we can offer, what markets look like, and to not necessarily push back, but to be able to offer our expertise on what they may need. And so, yeah, it happens, and I'm sure it happens a lot more frequently than what maybe people realize.
Right. So basically providing more data, more context, as you being the people in that function, right? Recruiting is all about people functions. So providing those insights so that leadership can actually take more informed decisions.
Yes, absolutely. And that's something that recruiters need to step up and do. Absolutely.
So one of the foundational aspects of recruitment marketing is to create a candidate persona. How do you go about building your candidate persona? What are the different aspects you look at, and could you just talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. When it comes to a candidate persona and what you're really targeting to find, the first thing that you need to do is really understand your corporate values. What within your organization helps people be successful and happy within their role. Does someone need to be collaborative? Do they need to innovate, or do they need to be interested in certain career trajectories or technologies or whatever it may be? It's more than just checking off those technical requirements, which honestly was the old sales approach. You looked in your database. Okay, I need someone with 5 years Java development experience. Yep, I don't care what else they did. They checked that box. You're hired. I'm gonna hire you. It's taking that step to really dig in with hiring managers and others within the organization to understand what requirements are really necessary for someone to have to be successful in a role, both on the technical side and also more of those soft skills. One of my favorite questions to ask candidates during an interview is what really drives and motivates you to succeed? And I think that's a really cool question to ask hiring managers. What is going to be the driving factor in this person for a prospective employee? Should they be excited about certain technologies? Should they be driven towards a certain vision? Is this a role where ultimately the hiring manager wants someone to grow into management level, so they have to have an interest in getting to that type of opportunity? Right. And so when you've gathered all of that information around, what experience, what skills, perhaps maybe what industry or whatever that you're targeting, you're going to build this candidate persona. And it's something you have to be very careful on how you're using that information as well. It's easy to get caught, I think, as recruiters, is looking for unicorns or purple squirrels or whatever type of unique term you want to use. And so that's where that recruiter has to really balance and push back, in a sense, with that hiring manager to understand what that market looks like, to challenge them in how they're thinking in terms of what is really going to make up this persona. And so the conversation should definitely go both ways. Recruiters should not sit back and be order takers and, yep, the hiring manager wants this, and this, and here's the persona, and then realize that person may not exist. Right? And so it's a really unique process that I think needs to involve a few stakeholders, and just, this is where that recruiter expertise can come in.
So those are all wonderful points, and I've often seen recruiters not really pushing back when it comes to finding the perfect candidate. Like you said, they may not even exist, and even if they do exist, then one should be prepared to wait 3, 4, 5 months, whatever it takes to get that exact requirement. And then they don't push back in the beginning. They don't have that constructive discussion, and then later on they are all obviously held responsible because you're not meeting the SLAs and you're not meeting the goals. So planning ahead is very, very important. And when you're creating this persona, right, one can add, like you said, a lot of things, and we can go overboard in trying to create the perfect candidate. Do you tend to draw a line somewhere? Is there like an internal guide that you have and say, if a hiring manager comes with X number of requirements, I don't even know if you would think about it that way, but I'm going to push back? Like, is there any guide for that?
I mean, it depends on the position and the level. I mean, it's really about the recruiter knowing the role within the organization, knowing, odds are if you're hiring someone into a role, there either has been someone or currently is someone in that role within the organization. So maybe talking to them about, okay, what did you expect when you maybe took this job, or what does your day-to-day look like, and then aligning it with what those requirements are. Oftentimes, like I said, you sit down with a hiring manager, they have those requirements in front of you, when actually those may not be what's actually needed to be successful, or there's things that can be trained up on. And so being able to understand the roles and how, what is actually required. And I think that's the key. I don't really have like a specific, okay, we can only have X amount of requirements, but as you're reading through something, I mean, how many times have job descriptions listed strong communication skills? Like some of these things can be assumed. And so it's really important for the recruiter to focus on, what the most important requirements are.
Got it. Somebody who's a recruiter today who's thinking about transitioning into a marketing-led recruiting, and they may or may not have the support of their overall larger talent acquisition org in that process. Are there a few things, kind of a checklist that they could keep in mind while they're thinking about this whole transition? Something very action oriented that they can get started with immediately.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the one thing is going to be branding. You may not have the support of a strong company brand, but you have a brand in and of it, even in and of yourself. I mean, that's something that people can absolutely leverage out there. I had someone tell me one time that if you're not building your own brand, someone else is doing it for you. Everyone has a reputation out there. And so the more that you align, content or communications with who you are, I mean, that is something that everyone can control. And so, even if you don't have a strong corporate brand, if you're messaging folks on LinkedIn about an opportunity or just to connect, and they see that you're not putting out any content or have no way to really kind of understand who you are, I mean, you're probably not going to get as good of a response rate. And I think that's something that everyone can control is the brand and the reputation they have across a variety of social media channels. Something else I think that is important is really identifying what candidate experience means to you and means to your organization. It's one thing to put content and information out there, but it's a whole other ballgame to engage with that network. And so, how do you approach, candidate interviews or candidate communications? Are you following up with them in the process? We still hear about recruiters that completely ghost candidates and never give them feedback on an interview or never let them know that they weren't selected or why. That's something that's really important and is building your reputation and ultimately your company and hiring processes reputations as well. I would say those are probably some really important tips, as you're moving into marketing-led recruiting, is really owning that process and shifting your mindset to just wanting to connect with people and not just focus on, the immediate job needs that you have now.
Got it. And you spoke about the aspects that a recruiter can control during the process, which is timely communication, keeping the candidate updated, sharing feedback post-interview, and that's something that's in our control. We should absolutely look at doing that. Then there are some other factors which are not in our control, like what's the candidate experience during the interview? What do they feel about the interviewing panel? Is this something that you've thought about, that you try to do? Are there things that you do in your current organization or in previous organizations to bake in a good candidate experience during the interviews as well?
Yeah, and even though it may not be in a recruiter's direct control, they do have the ability to influence. And so I know I have had a lot of discussions. I mean, you have hiring managers that maybe hire one person a year. Sitting down and interviewing someone and understanding how to make it a good experience they may just not know. I mean, that's where we as recruiters are the experts in this process. And so how can we influence? So keeping in touch with what is going on in the rest of the process. What types of, maybe sitting in on a hiring manager interview to understand what types of questions are they asking. I remember one time, and this was more in my early recruitment days, I did decide to sit in on several interviews that a candidate had to go through, just because I thought it would help me learn a little bit more about, a leader's approach to interviewing and maybe give me some cool tips. But what I found is that person was sitting down with 3 different people who were all asking that candidate the same exact questions.
Oh.
And so each interviewer thought they were doing a really great job, and maybe they were asking the right questions at the time, but none of them knew that this candidate was going through the same motions over and over and over again. And so that was a really great learning opportunity to say, look, should we be having a panel interview where you're asking these questions and everyone's hearing the same answer at the same time? Or do we break up, the focus where this interview is going to be more technology focused and this is going to be more focused on soft skills or whatever it may be? And so that's something that a recruiter can assess, evaluate, and influence as part of the process. And so when it comes to candidate experience, recruiters can influence, I think, more than what they realize if they step up and look deep into the process.
And that's a wonderful insight. And I now that you said it, I think everyone should at some point in time in their career sit in and listen into those interviews. You would get to know so much about why the candidates are being hired, why they're not being hired, and that's a lot of meaningful information that you can take upstream in your sourcing and candidates screening process. Looks like you put in a lot of thought in your career as you've evolved about thinking those various things, and that's highly commendable.
Yeah, I very much enjoy having the opportunity to look at processes and what we can do differently. And candidate experience, like I said, has been important to me since the beginning. I don't want to be cold calling people that are ignoring me all day long. I want to find new ways to connect. So it's just inspiring and helping others to understand, the impact and the drive that it can have on their business needs as well.
Right. Many people think that recruitment marketing takes a long time, and truth be told, there is a little bit of, I would say, gestation period for any kind of marketing activity, whether it's for business development or for recruitment for any other purpose, and does take a little bit of effort in the beginning to kind of set the right strategy, inbound strategy. In your opinion, is there a quick way to establish an inbound strategy with relatively quick results? And could you also within that talk about some of the tools and tech that has worked for you while setting up this process?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that anytime you're starting something new, everyone creates these really big, lofty goals on what they want to achieve, not realizing that it's going to take smaller wins to get there. So break down, what this goal is and what you're trying to achieve into smaller, more tactical and manageable goals. I think that's the most important thing up front. What you can do is, let's say, start with a specific role or maybe a sector within your organization that talent is notoriously difficult to find. Build a strategy around how can we appeal to that market and maybe get our brand in front of that type of audience rather than waiting until a business need comes up and you have to hire. So for example, let's say that you are maybe not technology focused. Let's focus on sales. I mean, let's say maybe you are looking for business development folks that work in the energy industry, for example. And so where do you find those people? So you can do market assessment and understand, okay, well, if we target, I'm just pulling this out at random. So if we target, Seattle is where we're going to find the top talent because that's where organizations are that have these types of people. So
right.
Build a strategy to get the brand out there in Seattle, not necessarily, hey, we have jobs, but hey, we are CSG and here's what we do. it's constantly being able to get that brand in front of people. So when you do reach out to someone on, LinkedIn or wherever it may be, or post a job, hey, I remember hearing about CSG in advertisement, or I remember hearing about CSG because they were helping to sponsor something in my community. It's really just kind of starting. I mean, that's a really good starting point to building a bigger, broader strategy of where you want to approach and build your brand. When it comes to personal recruitment branding that I've done, I get a lot of people that come out to me that reach out to me and say, where do I start? And I'm like, you have to start somewhere. Just start. It's okay if something doesn't work out. It's okay if you have a campaign that just completely bombs. You tried it, you figured out what didn't work, and now you can refocus your efforts to where it can. Don't get hung up on achieving results right away. Consistency in your approach and refining, your campaigns and your strategies based upon data and the results that you're getting is how you are ultimately going to achieve what you're looking to achieve. So just keep churning out, those campaigns, meaningful content, whatever it may be, and just recognize that you have to start somewhere. If you're sitting back, someone else is already 10 steps ahead of you.
Right. I think the key here is, like you said, starting small. We tend to blow up these things into so big that we don't even act on them. But if we can pick a small problem out of the bigger pool and just go and tackle that, we'll learn how to build on top of it. The second part of the question was, how do you are there certain tools that have worked well for you that the audience can learn about?
Yeah. Absolutely. So, I mean, like I said, we use Phenom People here as our CRM. So we focus on having people join our talent community that maybe are just interested in our corporate culture, our values, and who we are, where we may not have the right opportunity and fit for them now. That way we can get jobs in front of them very quickly if it's something that they identify as an interest, or just natural content and information that we're putting out there in the community so they can stay in touch with our corporate brand. Something else that is another approach is we use our current employees to help us get referrals. So build a robust referral program. If you have a strong corporate environment and values and your people live by them every day, it's going to naturally expand into the community. And so having them being able to refer people back and having a meaningful employee referral program can absolutely help. And then, yeah, I mean, like I said, we've been talking about focusing on that candidate engagement experience and keeping people warm and interested. It takes time to build that community, but once you start, you'll find that, it spider webs out, and you'll end up getting more and more results the more consistent that you are.
Got it. That makes so much sense. So Kim, I think we're towards the end of the webinar. I've absolutely enjoyed this discussion. There's tons of gold in the conversation that we've had. Just parting thoughts. What are some of the if you were to summarize the entire thing that we discussed and give a few takeaways to the audience, to our recruiting audience today, what would that be?
Yeah, I would say, don't be afraid of change, especially when it comes to recruiting. Realize that what we do is not necessarily sitting back waiting for to take orders and then just actioning on them. There's a lot of things that drive what we do, whether it's business needs or candidate behaviors or the technology and how people are communicating. And so don't be afraid to try new things and be willing to make that change your own. I would say that's important. Collaborate with your peers, whether they're in HR or marketing within your organization, to be able to build out meaningful content and campaigns that are going to showcase not only the jobs that you have, but focus on your corporate and employer brand as a whole. And don't forget to focus on your personal brand as well. I can't say that enough. That is something that you will carry with you throughout your entire career. And so if you, like I said, if you're not defining it now, someone else is defining it for you. So take ownership of that, build integrity around that, and be true to yourself.
I can add one tip from my side on the personal brand thing. Follow Kim on LinkedIn and other social platforms, and you'll know what are the right things to do. So Kim, we have we're done with our questions. We have a few questions from the audience, so I'll start with that. Yeah. So the first is from Shilpa. As a talent brand manager, I often find myself lost between the corporate branding vision and clear lead gen vision. What would be your advice in terms of how to stay focused and not get overwhelmed with either my seller content at the same time be watchful of my budget? LinkedIn is a tad too expensive, while most talent could be dwelling up there. So basically, how do you kind of balance out corporate branding vision with your own personal lead generation vision?
Yeah, I mean, so you'll find that corporate branding is going to be focused more on things like driving revenue, focus more on, client projects or whatever it may be, not necessarily showcasing the people within the organization. And so I think that's something that was an interesting discussion that I've seen and I've heard other people have, is that, the people are what make up an organization. And if you showcase strong values in the people within, that ultimately is going to appeal to your clients as well, because they know that if you're doing the right thing by the people within your organization, you absolutely are going to do the right thing by your customers as well. And so I think fostering that type of conversation is critical, and just earning that seat at the table that the people within the organization are what make things go round. And so having the ability to build campaigns around the people and the cool things that you're doing within an organization is important. So I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, it does. The next one is, what could be some of the talent platforms? Of course, people are familiar with LinkedIn and GitHub and Stack Overflow. Are there other niche talent communities that have worked for you in the past?
Honestly, outside of that has been just connecting with people through networking and referrals. I mean, so you have to always be open to talking to someone or connecting with someone. And so one thing that I have found is just networking within my organization, right? I mean, these are the people that have worked most of them have worked in the industry longer than I have. I mean, as a recruiter, we can easily hire for a variety of industries and kind of adjust and know what we need to do. But being able to really understand the industry and the community you work in and networking from there and just having conversations. Obviously prior to COVID, it was easier to attend different events and meet different people. It takes a little bit more of an effort to get there, but still continuing those types of conversations as well. Like I said, one of the biggest things for us was building our brand and turning into a talent magnet that's helping people come into our community. So we have a database of people that are just naturally interested in CSG and what we do that we can leverage as well. Outside of that, LinkedIn is really a great resource as well, but positioning yourself with the right messaging to open up those doors to talk to people is most important, because as we all know, LinkedIn can be a little bit off-putting to some, just because the type of messaging that people can put out there.
Right. So next one is like, how do you keep your company relevant and attractive with so much competition out there? I know you don't like using the term talent war, but it is competitive. And if you look at recruiting or within an organization, there's only so much that you could do to change the company itself. Like, you can't really influence the things at a big scale that the company does. So given what's under your control, what are some of the things that a recruiter can do to kind of, or a recruiting team can do to compete with the rest of the folks out there?
Yeah. It's not just the recruiting team's job to build the company brand. It's involving other stakeholders and people within your employer network to help you. And so, one example could be, having hiring managers reach out to their networks as well. Or, we've done video content that we've put out there where recruiters interviewed a hiring manager about maybe a job that they're looking to fill or what their team does from a different level. And so I think one of the important things is leveraging outside of recruiting, and showing that the brand is holistic across an organization. It's not just recruiting and HR pushing out stuff that is not relevant or not true. So I think that's one way that we've really approached to set ourselves apart is having everyone across the organization play a part in building that brand.
Got it. So what you're really saying is that this cannot just be one team's job. Everybody has to kind of come together, and kind of goes back to our earlier discussion that if you really want to achieve results, it has to be a strategic dialogue, and it's not something that you just like do on your own. The entire organization has to be bought into that.
Yep.
We getting more questions. Is it okay if I continue?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So the next one is, which are the best what are the good ways to engage candidates who are, not yet, like they're serving notice or they're not yet joined. Sometimes candidates would also say, hey, I want to take a leave before I kind of, join the organization. And with so many competitive bids and offers coming through, like is there something that you do post the offer to kind of engage with the candidate to ensure there's no drop off?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's maintaining communication, not only with the recruiter, but the hiring manager. So obviously prior to COVID, the things were done a little bit differently, where maybe the hiring manager and a couple folks from the team could take someone out to lunch. We've done different, more virtual settings where, we've got them lunch in-house essentially, and, kind of do more of a virtual meeting. But I think the underlying theme is just maintaining communication, sending out maybe some company swag before they join, or, talking to them about here's what to expect on your first day, asking them if they have any questions, helping them feel comfortable with the organization. Like when I talk to hiring managers and folks about candidate experience, candidate experience will eventually, if they're hired, turn into employee experience, and there's no gap between the two of those. And being able to ensure that everyone's playing a part to that transition and that experience is important. And I think that's something that has happened in recruiting in the past, when recruiters, okay, I filled my job, they're hired, they're your problem now. Well, yeah. That's not how it works at all, right? And so right. Recruiters can play a part in just that, an important part in that transition, by helping to foster lines of communication, working closely with maybe an onboarding team on what that interim experience is going to look like before they hit day one.
Got it. Makes so much sense. And there's the final question, and then we would wrap up. When one looks at, and this is even more relevant for our discussion, and the overall question is around AI in recruiting, and there's been a lot of talk around it, right? While it helps us in efficiency gains, it also has an impact on candidate experience. Now with recruitment-led marketing, of course, you would get even more number of candidates applying inbound, and hence you probably need a stronger screening mechanism. Catering to or talking to every candidate could become more work for recruiters. So what's your take on using artificial intelligence and ML-led tools on the screening and the initial conversation stage? Have you used something in the past? Does it work? Has it worked? Has it not worked? Why not?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think depending on the role, there certainly are ways that we can incorporate AI, different screening that will help recruiters be more efficient and successful. There's always that human element that can go along with it to some degree. And I think it's just based upon the communication aspect. If, I hate to say, I feel like there's just this reputation that so many applicant tracking systems are just rejecting people, but it's not the case. So many recruiters are actually looking at resumes that that people don't realize. And so I think using AI and different tools to help us, qualify candidates while still communicating with others, like, look, there's a way that, you can disposition someone, like, look, we understand you just based upon your application that you don't meet these skills, but here's maybe suggesting other opportunities, or join our talent community so we can keep in touch when the right opportunity comes up. It's not just, okay, well, if we implement, this assessment on the front end of the process and you don't meet the requirements, that sorry, you didn't get the job. I mean, it's all about just kind of building that community, because if someone is genuinely interested, they may, they're gonna apply to maybe a job that isn't a fit for them, but helping them understand where they may fit into your organization and giving them the right tools to continue to look for opportunities, I think is important. But there's that fine balance with AI where you have to keep that communication open and make people feel comfortable knowing that you're doing the right thing and you're keeping lines of communication open if they're still interested in the organization.
Got it. For me, that, one line that you said makes so much of a difference, that even if you're not fit for this opportunity, let's continue to engage and be part of a talent community. My wife, recently has been going through the whole experience of looking for a job, and I can't remember a single company that she said kind of, did that. And we're talking about some of the larger brand names out there. So, and I'm sure she would love to engage, be part of those communities, but looks like a lot of people are still not investing a lot of time and mental bandwidth in kind of putting those things in
Yeah,
place.
absolutely. And one tool that we use is we actually have a chat bot on our careers page that allows people to narrow down and perhaps find the right opportunity to apply to and ask questions. And I think that's a really great aspect of it, that, obviously I've been in that position too, where you just feel like I'm just going to apply to every HR job because then I have a better shot of getting into the company, right? It's
Right.
not a numbers game that way either. And so doing the right thing and using those AI tools while still keeping that human element and keeping people engaged, and understand that there's always a next time, and to build those relationships within your talent community is what's important.
Got it. So Kim, that brings us to the end of the panel discussion. Something that I like the most in our conversation throughout was people tend to get lost in tools and techniques or activities. But what kind of stood out in our entire last 40-minute discussion is so much about what you said is about the messaging, the company's culture. It's about starting small and at least doing some activity. It's about investing in your own personal brand as a recruiter. So, these are the content, and the message is what you're focusing on. And I think that's far, far more important than running a campaign in a certain way or using a certain tool, because we can, those will change and we can always figure out a better tool or a better campaign. But being authentic and really internalizing that message and then taking it out in earnest, I think that's what makes a difference. It's been an absolute delight talking to you. Thanks so much for all the insights that you've given today.
No, thank you for having me. It was a pleasure to have this discussion, for sure.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Kimberly, for joining us today. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Sachin. So if you guys still have questions for Kimberly, you can send it over by email, and we'll help you out with answers to that. We'll request her to take some time out and send you an answer. We're also going to be sending you a recording of this webinar, as promised, to all attendees in a couple of days. So keep an eye out for my colleague Emily in your inboxes. Also, I know that you guys love this episode. So if you'd like to learn more about Kimberly, learn more from Kimberly, I'd like you guys to go check out the content in the resources section on Hackerearth. We've got some recordings of some of Kimberly's previous sessions with Hackerearth. I promise you, they are pure gold. So go ahead and check them out. And thank you so much for making it to the webinar here today. It really means a lot to us when we have a nice, large live audience. It really helps us out a lot. So until next time, I'm Akash signing off for Hackerearth. Take care and stay safe.